All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for being here today. My name is Elizabeth da Silva, and with Chioma, we organize these events. We're very excited to have Jennifer Lucas, New Well Solutions Manager for VP Production and Operations, and Jacek Jaminski, Global Operated by Others Manager for VP Production and Operations with us today. And we are going to talk about leadership. So today, the intent is for you to learn how to implement and practice leadership skills that will help you grow and shine in your professional and your personal journey. We'll be touching on several topics of interest, including influencing others, how to manage difficult conversations, servant leadership, and more. But before we get started, I'm going to go really quickly through the agenda. And I'm also going to be providing some information about future events. And I think I have the agenda after this slide, actually. So Chioma will be adding the link to the chat to sign up for the APG Women's Network and a link to check out our YouTube channel. We post information regularly, so make sure you check those out. We have several upcoming events that are very interesting. We have the APG Awards and Nominations, and this is happening on July 27th and at 12 p.m. Central Time. On August 12th, we invite you to join us for the Geology of Coffee, an educational tasting event for coffee enthusiasts. So this should be a pretty fun event. And as part of Image this year, which is happening at the end of August, we have a few events that we have organized. On August 28th, we have a short course on reservoir engineering for geoscientists. On August 29th, we have a panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the geoscience workforce of tomorrow. And on August 30th, we have a lunch on aging U.S. shale wells, so a little bit more technical. And on August 31st, we have a women's networking breakfast that is happening from 7 to 9 a.m. in person. Also, if you are attending Image, make sure you check out our booth in the exhibit hall. And finally, on September 27th, so that's coming a little bit later, at 7 p.m., we have an in-person, and this is going to be an in-person and virtual event. It's a book discussion on Gaslighted with author Christine L. Williams. And for these, you can find more information in the AAPGWN Lone Star Facebook page. We'll be sharing those links in the chat, so make sure to check those out. So the agenda, I started with in introduction and future events, and then I'm going to hand over to Jennifer and get us started here, and then Jacek will follow. And then we have 15 minutes for a Q&A and then close out. So Jennifer, without further ado, I will hand over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience and touch on some of these very interesting leadership topics. So
great. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to discussing leadership with you and talking about the journey that I've had so far in my career. I hope you can hear me okay. It sounds still coming through. My camera's been going on and off. So if it starts to get a little strange, let me know and I'll switch it off so the sound comes through better. But I'm going to start by talking about effective leadership. And what I think about when I think of effective leadership, there's leadership where you have authority and people follow you because they have to follow you. And when I think of really being an effective leader, you want people to want to follow you. And so some of the things that I'm going to talk about today really are about getting to that place where people want to follow you and that you're able to influence people and lead with that authority. So I can start with my journey if you want to go to the next slide. And so my personal journey here, just to talk about how it all started. I was born in Illinois. I grew up in Indiana, so I'm from the Midwest. And then I joined the military. I was in the Army after high school, before college. And that really changed how I see things, especially with teamwork. I think that's really where I learned the value of team and how important it is to really care for your team. With the military, you know, luckily I was never deployed, but it can be that you're really looking out for other people's lives and you really have to work together to keep yourselves safe. So that really stuck with me, a really big part of who I am today. After the military, I went on to get a bachelor and master's degree in geoscience. I went to the University of Alabama. And after that, I joined BP. So I started my career with BP in 2001. And the first half, a little over half of my time at BP was really focused on technical work. And so I started out with the Gulf of Mexico shelf. I worked Wyoming, worked the onshore Gulf Coast, did a lot of exploration, a lot of development work, a lot of prospecting. I also did a lot of well planning on operations work. And usually it was working wells that I had done the prospecting for. But what happened is that once I became good at it, I asked for that role once to really be into well planning and operations. But then the business need came up. So it's kind of some of the things that came out of that time. One is, I think it's really important to build your technical expertise. Another thing that came out of it was being open to the business need, because sometimes that will lead you in a direction that opens up opportunities in the future. And so within BP and during my time in my early and mid career, you know, there was always a need for people to plan wells and to do the operations piece. And that led to more and more opportunities. So that's kind of one of the things I have off to the side there. Also, another big piece of kind of that early part of the career is building relationships and networks and really building your reputation. And so I think of that phase of my career as really that time where I built my technical experience, became known in the company, became really good at certain parts of the business, and really open to what that business need is and open to the opportunities that came my way. I think it's really good to have a plan, but to also be open to things change. I would never have thought that I would be in the role that I am today if you had asked me back in 2002, 2005, even 2010, maybe. So this is one of the learnings that I've had there. And then I started to move into more of the traditional leadership type roles. So I moved to the deep water Gulf of Mexico. I was the technical lead there for a new drill center and 3 really big wells, big project. And that led into more opportunities, another special project that we called the alternative well design. And that was really looking at maximizing our reserves, minimizing the costs, and looking for new and innovative ways to work. It was actually one of the highlights of my career. I then moved on to be the Hopper Squad team lead. And then I moved into a role that's similar to what I'm doing today. And that was the new well delivery manager for Western Hemisphere. And in that role, I had 25 direct reports and a lot of area to manage. Now my current role has actually broadened, but I no longer have direct reports, which is interesting, which takes me back to now I'm in that place again where I have to lead without authority. The people that I'm leading a unit of over 60 people, and none of them report to me or report to people who report to me. So I'm back to that place. So it's really important to make sure that you're able to lead without that authority. And some of the things I've learned here too is recovery from setbacks. So there are going to be times when things don't go as planned, or you try for a role and you're not the one who's selected for the role. And that can be really disappointing and really tough. But sometimes good things come from that. So I did have a big setback in that part of my time at BP, but then I was given the alternative well design lead position And that turned out to actually be one of the highlights of my career. So just keep that in mind when you hit disappointments in your career. And then at the bottom, I just have a couple things that I just wanted to point out. Just part of my philosophy is staying true to yourself and your purpose, and really using your unique talents, and come up with your own leadership style. I don't think, early on, probably about 10 years into my career, I had a lot of advice that I needed to be different, that I needed to change my style to be a leader. And I tried, and I didn't like myself, actually. So I decided, that's okay. If it's not meant to be, that's fine. I need to be true to who I am. And if it takes longer to get where I want to be, that's okay. So I made that, I would say it's not really a compromise. I think I was compromising when I was trying to be something I wasn't. So just staying true to myself, and I did get there. And what's really interesting, and Jacek has probably experienced this too, is who BP sees as a leader has changed over the years. So actually that style of leadership that I was being pushed into isn't even what we're looking for anymore. So I would say stay true to you. So we can go to the next. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about giving feedback in difficult conversations. So this is hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for everyone, but it's so important. Communication is key to everything. And so if you really want to have a good team that works well, people thrive, you've got to be able to have these conversations. And so how to start? So in my mind, there's 4 key pieces to this. I'll start with the top 4 here. Fostering relationships, checking your purpose and why you're bringing up the issue. You need to listen to their perspective, and you need to help your team members win. So now I'll kind of dive into these with some examples. So fostering relationships, I think that's paramount to everything that we do. And I think if you really want to have good, productive conversations with people, they have to trust you, they have to know you, they have to know that you care, they have to realize that you're coming from a place where you want to help. And so I think the relationship theme is going to keep coming up as we go through my portion of this discussion. I think it's just really valuable. And I think it's really valuable to show that you have time for the people in your team. Make them a priority. I also think it's really important for you to value your team and make sure they know that you care. So then the next piece, check your purpose, decide whether to raise it. So it's good to think about, if you've got an issue that's coming up and you need to talk about it, it's going to be difficult, understanding why you're bringing it up. Is there an action that's going to come out of it to make it better? If there's nothing that you can do to make it better, maybe it's not the right topic to bring up. So I think it's good to think about what you hope to accomplish from it. There can be many reasons why you're having conversations with people that can be difficult. So it could be development. So I've had lots of conversations with people that aren't always easy, but it's for their own development. So an example of that would be someone is frustrated because they're not getting promoted. And so having that discussion with them of what it is, where their gaps are, why isn't that happening for them? It could be a performance issue or a behavior problem. Those are a little bit more difficult. But again, you could have something. I had a situation where one of the employees working for me, he wasn't doing as well. I'd known him a long time. We had just gone through a reorganization and his performance was sliding. And so I pulled him aside and had a conversation about some of what his colleagues were having trouble with, trying to find out what the issues were. And the other thing you need to do too is check your emotion. So if someone's made you angry on the team, make sure that you are not angry when you go into the conversation. You got to give yourself some space and really make sure you're in control of your own self. So then the next piece for me is listening to their perspective. So being empathetic, non-judgmental, watching for defensiveness. If they're defensive, you need to de-escalate, remind them that you are their ally, that you're there to help them. And if emotions are running high, I find it's really helpful to take a break. I think sometimes people are hit with this and they just need to hear what the issue is, take it away. And sometimes maybe they've got to grieve. They didn't get a role, they didn't get the job they wanted, the promotion. And sometimes they just need time to think about it themselves. Maybe they're not aware of their behaviors. And then you can come back and address it when you're both had time to think about it. So be open to that. Something about listening to their perspective. So from the example where I talked about after a reorg, one of the employees on my team was having a really hard time. So when I sat down and talked to him, he did confide in me that, well, he felt really bad because he didn't want to let us down. He was feeling depressed after the reorganization. He had been taken out of a role he really enjoyed and was put in a role he didn't like at all. And so when you listen and you understand what the issues are, then you can help them overcome whatever issue they're having. So that comes to the help your team members win. And so what I like to do here is work with the individual to create a development plan. So in these two scenarios, so the one who wanted to be promoted, we sat down, looked at where this employee's gaps were, and it turns out for him, it was that he's very good technically, but that he really hadn't shown any people leadership at all. And to get that next promotion, he really needed to have some of that experience. And so in his development plan that we put together, we had him take on our next intern, come up with a project for the intern and be the intern supervisor. And so that really helped to get to that next level, and he has been promoted after that. And then the other example I gave where one of the employees was a bit depressed, wasn't enjoying his role. We had kind of a short-term and a long-term look. So the long-term was when another role was available, I would help him to release him from the role he was in and to get a new role, but that wouldn't happen right away. So what we did in the meantime was look at the team that he had left, even though BP had decided that that work didn't seem important to the greater BP, actually that work was still needed. So we carved out part of his time to still support in the role that he had done before. And that made him happy. It also fulfilled the business need. And then also on top of that, we found carved out a bit of time, with the priority being obviously the role that he was in, but when he had spare capacity to learn a new skill for future roles. And so it can be 10, 20% of someone's time, but that really helped turn him around and make him feel better, give him hope. And really, then by the time that we were able to put him in a new role, he was in a good place and hadn't burned any bridges by not doing the role he was in just because he was depressed. So those are a couple of examples just to make it a little bit more real about what I'm talking about, how you help people win. So it needs to be actionable. And then the fifth item I have here is that we ourselves have to be open to feedback from our team, from colleagues. And I think being open to feedback and just practicing that and learning it, because it's not easy, criticism's never fun. But getting better at receiving helps us also to get better at giving the feedback that we need to give to others. And then just trying to embrace the fact that this information, it really is a gift and we can learn from it. And if you don't agree, there's still always something to learn from it. And then I do have a quote from one of my favorite bosses at the bottom here. So he was, some of you may even know him, Pinky Vincent. He was a manager of mine that gave me a lot of wisdom as a leader. And one of his quotes is, "The only difference between ordinary and extraordinary is the conversation you did not have. Your team will talk to someone, make sure it is you." So I think that's really good advice. You need to be open. You want them to come to you, and you can never over communicate. So we can move on to the next slide. So this one is about influencing others. And again, this is kind of what I talked about in the opening, leading without authority. So we all have to do this at some point. In fact, we all lead all the time, whether we know it or not. We're all leaders. And it can be really difficult to lead without authority. So kind of the key pieces, I'll just talk through the top four at the moment. So the technical expertise, I think, is really critical in this space. Sharing your vision, checking your ego, and relationships, always relationships. So I'll start off with the technical expertise. So I think it's just really important to your career to just set that baseline early on, and build that technical credibility, build those technical skills. You want to have a proven track record, experience. It takes time to build wisdom. Be patient. It is a journey, but it's really important. This is what will make people trust you and want to follow you. And then sharing your vision. So I think it's really important to understand what the problem is that you need to solve, demonstrate the value, believe it is achievable. So you want your team to see it, believe it, and own it. And when it comes to owning it, I think fostering that collaboration is really important. Bringing in their perspectives, making them a part of it. I think that's how you get a high performing team that's really purpose driven. And then checking your ego. So this one can be hard too. We all want to win. We all want to get promoted, all of that, but you have to make sure you're not making your projects about you or your teams about you. So I just think that's really important. And your attitude and how you treat people. So this is really critical part of being a good human. You want to come to work at your best, and make sure you're treating others well. And I think adopting that win-win mentality goes with checking your ego too. Don't fall into the trap of trying to be the star. You don't want to be the star of a losing team. You want to be part of a team that's winning. So I think that's really, really important. Relationships. So again, I've talked about this already, but building trust within your team, always being open, honest, transparent. You want to build that camaraderie and that common purpose, which is also in that sharing your vision piece. And you genuinely need to care about your team. And you want to prioritize and manage workloads. Definitely want to watch out for the well-being of your team. And you want to do your best, and you don't want to let people down. Follow through on your commitments. That's how you build that good reputation. And then I've got another quote here that I've always loved, probably since I was about a teenager, is there's no limit to what can be accomplished if it doesn't matter who gets the credit. And it's really hard as a human. We all want the credit. We all want the glory. But it's true. When you really stop and think about it, we can achieve so much more when we work as a team and we're not worried about that piece of it. And then my last slide here. So this is just kind of, if I were to boil it down to three things that I think are really important as a leader: relationships, technical expertise, and being yourself. Develop your own leadership style. So just to reiterate what I've said, treat everyone with respect, value your team. Whether you're an individual contributor or the team leader, you've got to value your team. How you show up at work every day really does matter. Technical expertise, that really is the foundation of your career. And it is that technical credibility and that solid reputation is so important. And be patient. This is a journey. It takes time. It doesn't happen quickly. And then again, like I said, being yourself, developing your own leadership style is really important. We're all unique. We have our own strengths. And we as an organization are always going to be better if individuals bring their strengths. Regardless of job description, we are all leaders. So remember that. People are following you. You do have an influence. Make sure it's a good one. Understand your development needs and seek out advisors. I think knowing what your strengths are, it's okay to also know what your weaknesses are and to seek out people who that's their strength and you learn from them. And never stop learning. Embrace change. Have courage to try new things. That can be really hard. And remember, when we do fail, that we do learn a lot from our failures. I know I have. So having that courage to try new things is huge. That's why I have this Wayne Gretzky. It's another one of my favorite quotes. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I think in life, that's just really good philosophy. If you don't try, it won't happen. It won't work. So don't be paralyzed by that fear. So that's all for me.
Thank you, Jennifer. Absolutely love that quote right there. I think I can relate to that. Sometimes, lack of courage to doing things, right, will prevent you from getting there. So
Right.
good thing to keep in mind. So we're gonna save the questions to the end. So Jacek, I'll hand over to you.
Somebody on the line. Again, thank you very much for the invitation to join today's conversation on leadership, and I can attest, having a privilege of working with Jennifer, that she's an excellent leader, and as acknowledged not by me but a lot of people who report to her and work with her. So it's a great company to be discussing the leadership. So if you don't mind going to the slide, to the introductory slide from me. So I chose a theme of a leadership as a choice. As Jennifer said, everybody is a leader, but we do have a choice how we actually exhibited that leadership. So before we jump into my themes about leadership, I would like to give you some introduction. So I've been born in Poland, in a very small town. I mean, it used to be about 20,000 people. Now it's about 6,000–7,000 people. My journey, like a lot of personal journeys, is about change. And I did move from the small town to the large city, moved to the Krakow, where I went to the university, got my master's degree in palynology from all disciplines of geoscience, looking at pollen and spores in biostratigraphy. Spent about 3 years as an instructor at the university and decided to take on my journey to the United States. I arrived in 1993, went to school at the University of Cincinnati, and received my doctorate in geochemistry and stratigraphy. I was about 12 years ahead of my time, so I did a PhD on chemostratigraphy, except at that time, before the big booming of the shale gas and shales in the United States, nobody cared much about actually chemostratigraphy. So decade plus ahead of when it was really popular and really applicable. Didn't really matter much because I did manage to move on from academia subsequently to join Amoco in '97. In my first job, I did 2 internships at Amoco and joined full-time in '97, just before the merger of Amoco and BP. So yet another change. Managed to survive the merger and been with BP since 1999. My journey was from individual contributor. I mean, I already mentioned I was moving from palynology to geochemistry to exploration when I joined Amoco and BP. Spent about 8 years in the individual contributor roles and had the privilege to be asked and get offered the job of a team leader for an exploration team working the regional project in Sakhalin in Russia, working out of Houston. And subsequently to that, I spent 16 years until now, almost 17, in various leadership roles, either team leader, manager, mostly in exploration, managing the teams across the world. I had the chance to lead the Arctic Regional Project, was at the signing of the Arctic Memorandum of Understanding with Rosneft in Russia across the Kremlin. It was actually quite an interesting story. And most recently, I moved on to a business, to my current role as a global operated by others manager for subsurface, at which role I oversee the delivery of the subsurface work across BP in 9 countries and probably actually 12 countries and 9 main countries, where similarly to Jennifer, I do not have a line management responsibilities. I did in the past led the teams of 27 people, combined exploration appraisal team for US Gulf of Mexico. Currently, I don't have a line management responsibility. So as she said, it's very important to actually be able to morph your leadership from being a direct line manager to being manager without a specific organizational authority given to you to actually lead. And interesting enough, I think both Jennifer and I are experiencing the leadership as defined by people who we lead. So the people actually come to us for coaching, mentoring, advice, guidance, And I think what my theme, as I will pursue my further themes farther into the presentation, there's another side to leadership, which is the followership. So you cannot be a leader if you actually don't build the followership. So you need to think about who is actually following you. Do you have anybody who actually wants to listen to you? Is anybody who actually you serve? And that would be another theme, servant leadership. Is anybody who actually you're useful for? So again, not make it about yourself, make it about the people who you are contributing to in their either personal or professional journey. And the final theme for me was moving from domestic regional to international exploration and production to current global job. The themes I would like to touch on is the first one is about experimenting, challenging conventions, learning and unlearning. I have this crazy tendency to try different things. So when I was working at the university in Poland, I actually I was asked if I would like to be a fixer for National Geographic and Smithsonian. We're talking 1991 Poland, when hardly anybody traveled to Poland. So their writer, photographer for National Geographic wanted to have somebody who actually speaks Polish, can drive them around the country, arrange the work for them. So I took a leave of absence of the university teaching, and then, fun enough, started my journey with National Geographic Smithsonian, which in addition to having an excellent adventure, like flying helicopters without the doors in February in Poland, shooting pictures from the helicopter, very cold, and just basically balancing about $16,000 worth of photographic equipment on your lap when the helicopter is banking left and right, to taking another leave of absence to be a mud logger for a coal bed methane project in Poland, to most recently just trying different things like sailing, being dive master, trying agile management with my team. Actually, Elizabeth was part of that team in the past. So we had just a journey of trying different things ourselves. So again, experimenting, challenging conventions, learning, and subsequently unlearning the things that don't serve you are very important. And as Jennifer said, it is okay to fail. It's okay to fail, and it's okay to learn from it. So I think I call it unlearning a high school syndrome, and you had to have only A's and always be perfect. I think it's actually much better to allow yourself to be a bit vulnerable. It's being able to expose the possibility of being, attacked of some or don't feel as good, because that's actually the state in which you learn most and then can actually progress and have ability to evolve much faster rather than being stuck and very fixed on the way you operate. Another story means building teams and solving problems. Another piece on leadership for me is actually make yourself useful. So have a radars out on defining what problems people need to be solving around you, or where else you can contribute to solving the problems. You heard that theme in Jennifer's discussion. For me, it was couple stories. One was when I was working back in Poland, nobody had a budget for IT to set up a first access to the internet. We're talking 1992 in Poland, and basically we ended up with equipment, and my head of the department saying, well, now what, right? So we have this 3,000 pages of the documentation, a piece of software, and a computer, right? And I said, well, let me see what I can do with that. So I read 3,000 pages on IT problems, set up the network, connected to the internet, and actually tested with the Southern Methodist University with my colleague across the world. So that the theme in here is look for opportunities to solve problems, but also try to work slightly outside of your job description. If you're, and sorry, Jennifer, if you're only a soldier, you're not going to be an officer. So you just need to sometimes, and even soldiers right now are asked to think for themselves. If you're special forces, you have to solve the problems on the fly. The same thing at work, anywhere you are, try to work outside of your job description. The final couple additional comments, that courage is scary, and it's meant to be scary. Sometimes it's very hard, but this is exactly when we grow. So the theme for me is crisis and conflict. A story I have in here is during the 2010 Macondo response, we were actually acquiring seismic in the US Gulf of Mexico. So when the spill was going on and 45,000 people were trying to make it right, I was asked to go to Galveston and deliver a safety message to the crew of the boat, CGG boat, which was supposed to deliver the infill seismic acquisition in the Gulf. And you can imagine I didn't sleep for 7 days because you cannot go off the script of general statements about safety. So again, as Jennifer was commenting, make it about yourself, make it about people. So what I decided to do, I went and tried to be as authentic as I can be. I went and stood in front of 60 people on the boat, which was basically 2 boats, crew change, and basically look at my steel toe boots. And I say, listen, when I'm delivering safety message to you, what I'm thinking about is the steel toe boots I had with me when I was working on the same rig, which is right now basically under the Gulf of Mexico. And we were pulling out the core, and the chip of the core came out when we were breaking the core barrel. And a gentleman next to me on the rig said, well, can I take a chip of that rock because I would like to give it to my 5-year-old son? And the bottom line is that the same person could have been a person who lost their life and paid the ultimate price on that rig. I can tell you right now that there was a complete silence in the room, right? So this is an example when I chose to don't go off the script, just say, make it about you and make it about people. We care about each other. And the final comment, again, is nothing is completely impossible, may just look different than what you expected. 30 years ago, I didn't know I would live in the United States. I thought my career would be related to working as an academic instructor in Poland. 20 years ago, I thought I would be a technical individual contributor, and I was very much worrying about not getting a green card and US citizenship. Well, 10 years ago, I thought my career would be related to exploration leadership. And today I'm a US citizen for 11 years, working outside of exploration and doing completely different things that I was thinking I would be doing 10, 20, 30 years ago. So keep it very open, remain open-minded. And be your own friend. When the going gets tough, give yourself advice you would have given to your friend in the same situation. Don't be your judge, be your own friend. Because it's very easy to judge yourself. Oh my gosh, what have I done? Or I should have not done it. Pause. Just be good to yourself, because there's a lot of other people who will be judging you, but you really need to take care of yourself. And the comment in here is I like it from Henry Ford. Henry Ford is, whatever you think you can, or you think you cannot, you're right. So it is your choice how you frame your basically journey as a leader. So let's go to the next slide. So why we should be, so one comment in here is about the world. The world is changing. And actually, as leaders, as people, we need to keep up, or maybe we can actually try to get ahead. In the past, what we defined as leadership was completely different. We're looking at stability. We're looking at the shareholder economy, which is defined by money we're making for the companies. We're looking a lot at execution and the efficiency of execution. Right now, this angle of leadership is probably less effective. The world is changing very fast. I encourage you to go deeper into a concept of VUCA. I know Jennifer will be familiar with it because it's the Department of Defense concept, which defines the very rapid changes of the world after the Cold War. And this is a term which is being used by business right now to describe our general reality of the business and the world in which we live. And that basically addresses the fact that we are living in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Go wiki it, give it a thought, but I think it's very important that if we look for stability, it's most likely going to be very difficult to achieve it because the world is changing very fast. Another big change, which I think leaders might be benefiting from being aware of, is that in the past we focused only on getting things faster and getting things cheaper. We still need to do it, but we need to also focus on sustainability broadly understood. And as leaders, first of all, where you stand right now, you may not be working yet on, you might, but may not be working yet on improving environmental sustainability of the world, but you definitely can define sustainable way of working with people you lead. The people you lead are also your stakeholders. They're people who are one very important stakeholder group, not only only your bosses, not only your peers, but also the people you work with are part of the group that makes you a leader. One comment I made, I highlighted on the graph to the left, it's many leadership skills of the last century, which is the stability, economy, shareholder economy, and execution, are becoming somewhat obsolete. They're not going away, but they're being replaced by the focus on vision, innovation, meaning, change, and stakeholder. And how you can do it yourself. I mean, my view on it is that you may benefit from diversifying your contribution while maintaining your core discipline. So as Jennifer highlighted, it's important to have your technical discipline, but also develop broad horizons in peak expertise and broad horizons. That's how we became most successful in our jobs, because you can vary, you can change, you have choices you can select from portfolio of skills that you have to be most effective, especially if you try to experiment with working outside of your peak expertise. Again, partner with your customers and stakeholders in meeting their needs. I think it's very important. If you need it, you'll be around. There's no question. Doesn't matter. In some capacity, you will be around because you make yourself useful. And how you do it, ask questions, listen, understand. And it's very difficult. If you're all-knowing person, it's going to be very difficult for you to listen. So pulling back that ego and being willing to open is actually very important. So learn in a context in which your customers live, work, and operate. Think broadly, right? So that's going to apply to your bosses as well. They are your customers, right? So if you're going to come home and say, oh my gosh, this guy did this and the girl did that, that's not going to work. Think about what are the contexts in which they operate. And the final one is to be innovative. Look for ways to create new ideas, new ways of working in solving problems. Remain open-minded, network, look for problems to solve, and be willing to learn. So navigate change, gain people's trust, and motivate people to do their best work. And the next theming here would be around the servant leadership. Next slide, Elizabeth. And just a couple of thoughts on several thoughts on the servant leadership. So the first question I would ask yourself, why do you want to be a leader? What drives you to be a leader? You are a leader, but if you want to be formalizing your leadership, what is it? Why you want to be a leader? Why do you think leadership is important? These are questions I'm not going to answer. I'm just proposing you give it a thought. And the final one, what needs do you expect the leader to provide you with? So what are needs are met by the leaders who actually you are looking to for leadership? So what is servant leadership? So as we talked a moment ago, the servant leadership is taking the leadership beyond just strategic goals and performance. Servant leadership is focused on people, and the themes you've heard people mentioned many times today. It's about supporting and growing others, and also including the full, broadly understood the stakeholder group to work with you. I think that it is I call it a force multiplier, and it's about showing others how to fish. The best example is of the team I had the privilege to lead, which in theory was responsible for one country, and in practice actually delivered projects in 5 countries, which 4 countries and myself allowed, because the fact I could actually delegate trust and people trusted me, we could basically do much more work, much more effectively and efficiently than would have been doing if we were sitting with a command and control system. And the final thing is focusing on people who will help you outside of the work. It's a part of the leadership in your personal life. It's focusing at home, your family, friends, and sometimes a smile actually I manage by being nice to people and helping them and acknowledging their part. I actually got an upgrade to the first class on a United flight. Just people are going to respond to it. So try it. It's worth it. Give it a shot. And the question on the left-hand side, I just managed, just give it a thought. What are the dimensions of change? The humans are actually the toughest to change. We're still very much driven by fear. We're still very much driven by hypervigilance. Organizations are very difficult to change. We're still very many places relying on command and control. So we're about decades, basically centuries in kind of evolving and changing the way of either behaving ourselves or running organizations. Whereas the technology is changing very, very fast. I mean, probably nobody uses your smartphone from 5 years ago. So that's why it's so important to focus on people. We're people first, and our basic human needs are needing to be met in order to be successful in here. So yes, you can do technology, but you also, if you want to, you can spend your whole life as formal leader in the future to basically working on making sure that people are working to their best. And my final slide. So lessons for the future from me is to be a good leader, you need to be a good follower. The way I define it, just be the follower you would like to lead yourself. So, look at the people you're leading and try to, who are the people you want to lead, how they behave, how they present themselves, how they contribute, and try to mimic it for your own leaders. I think if you build that, the chain of followership and leadership in the right direction and understand that balance between the leadership is actually, it may actually open up a lot of opportunities for you and expand the horizon of leadership. Another one is, for me, is as a manager and leader, you may have authority over someone's job, but remember, you never, ever have authority of their life. And then that's something which people sometimes forget. You are not governing people's life. If you ever try to do it, you're going to fail as a leader. The final one I mentioned before is think beyond your job description. If you only stick to the job description and you say it's not my job, well, you're really not showing a true leadership. Many of us succeeded just because we're able to pivot and stick out of the job. And who gets hired and keeps their job? People we need today, definitely. So if you're passionate about geoscience, stick with geoscience, but also people who can adjust to what we need tomorrow. So think about upskilling to the skills you may need for the future. And also think about how you're gonna develop yourself so you can thrive in disruption. Things are changing, they will be changing, and defining your resilience to disruption and ability to lead in these conditions is huge. So in summary, it's not about you, it's about people you empower, it's about people you support and lead. But remember, you need to take care of yourself, and that's both physically, emotionally, and otherwise. Nobody can become a good leader if you don't take care of yourself. People rely on you, but that's extra load on yourself. So one quote I like, no one ever poured water from an empty well. So make sure that you replenish that well of your leadership when you wanna, that you can then provide to others. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Jacek. So I think with that, I had a mental goal to ask the audience some questions, but we're getting some questions in the chat. So I think I'm going to be reading those right now. And we have a question from Moon. She says, thank you for the great presentation. What are the best options for a leader to communicate with those team members who are not interested in communicating and are making issues in a team?
You just want us to answer? I think one-on-one is probably the best way to handle something like that, where you might have a bit of a behavior problem, if I understand the question correctly.
Correct. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just comment on it. I mean, I think further to Jennifer, just try to listen, right? I think she mentioned in her presentation a lot about listening. So trying to understand the other people's position is actually very important.
Okay, awesome. So we have another question from Danielle Pacheco. What are your suggestions for communicating with your team or a team leaders who isn't leading and isn't doing their job?
So if I understand this correctly, I think that you're being led by someone that you feel isn't leading your team effectively. Is that correct? That is tough. If that's what you're asking, I think that can be I know I've been in situations like that before, and I think that can be really difficult because, especially if you are reporting to that person, I think I have found in my own experience, I have stepped into the gap at times and helped lead, which may be more of an enabling behavior than actually fixing the problem. But I think this is a really tough one. Because you can go to their boss or manager, but that can be really tricky too. So I think it would be good to find someone you trust in your organization and talk to them and get advice from them too.
And look for another job.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we frequently say that people most likely don't leave organization, they leave their line managers or managers, right? So, you know, if organization cares about maintaining your skill sets, then somebody is gonna salvage you, for lack of a better description, in a larger organization. It is much more difficult. I don't know your specific, you know, conditions and environment, but it's much more difficult in a smaller employer, you know, kind of setting of a smaller employer. So it could be difficult, but you know, actually, unfortunately, one of the directions maybe actually change the boss and change the company.
Yeah, that's a really tough one.
It's a tough one.
All right. We have another question. How does a leader carry out human management, especially working with a team of different mindsets?
Well, I'll jump in again. I think, I'm sorry if I keep cutting you off, Jacek, but
No, I'm letting you go first. Go on.
I do think that treating everyone as an individual is really important, and actually building that relationship with them will help you have insights into how to manage them. Everybody has different needs. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I start with the team. I would say the first thing, thankfully, you have a team of people with varied opinions, and because of diversification of thoughts and views is kind of actually what you want to have in a team. And although it makes it difficult, it's actually well worth it. And then my usual approach is just I start every new team with having one-on-ones and then open the door, quote, you know, proverbially, for basically one-on-ones check-ins with people, so I can understand how they change, and then basically they know if there's something, conditions change in their life, we can actually have a quick catch up or keep moving. But I usually start from one-on-one, just trying to understand and go beyond the work. I mean, it's, you know, knowing kids' names and what you know keeps them going and what they enjoy doing. It's gonna go a long way to building the rapport in the team.
Excellent. All right, so there is a question from Tanya, and she says, thinking about the AAPG merger that didn't go through, just curious if you have any reflection on things that could be improved leading an external network. I don't know if Tanya is online and wants to elaborate a little bit more to give a bit more context on that.
It'd be great, Tanya, if you can go off mute, because it's a very broad question. And I see Tanya, if it's Tanya Campbell, I think she's online still.
Oh, so she said she lost her voice.
Oh.
Chioma, any context on that maybe you can provide? If not, we can move to the next question, maybe.
Yeah, we can move to the next question.
All right. So the next question, in your opinion, what differentiates a leader from a manager?
Well, if you're a leader, you have people who want to follow you. And if you're a manager, they're expected to follow you. So you can be both. But I think to really be a leader, you have had to, you have a vision that people want to follow. They trust you. There can be a big difference between a leader and a manager.
And one of the quotes was that manager means making, and leader makes meaning.
That's a good
So it's not mine, but I like that. I like the definition, and I think that every good leader probably should start from being a good manager, because part of your job is management as well, right? So resources and other things. So if you cannot manage, you may undermine your leadership's ability. So I wouldn't. It's not one or the other. It's probably building on management skills to add leadership. And leadership, as we touched on, I mean, the way my definition is, to be a leader, you need to have followers, and that defines what Jennifer said. So fully agree with her comment.
Excellent, thanks. All right, I think we have time for a few more questions. So Rodia writes, how can a leader motivate the people they're leading? For example, how a student leader can get the students to be more interested in geosciences despite the situation of high rate of unemployment in their country?
That is tough. Yeah, I mean, I think trying to build a passion for the science itself is one way to go. I think it will be tough if there's a high rate of unemployment, and if that's directly involving geosciences, that's going to make it harder. I don't know if that's a general statement or geosciences in particular, but trying to ignite that passion, showing, what it is that you like about it, helping them to see the good in that. But I think this is a tough one.
I mean, for me, the question is, I mean, I think geosciences are not going to go away. I honestly think that many of you can start careers in geoscience right now and retire from careers in geoscience 35 years from now after having a successful geoscience career. I joke internally that you may not be the most liked people around because you're working oil and gas, or you're working mining, or you're working something else. But if this is your passion, if that's really what you want to do, stick with it. And then only advice I would give, just try to get another parallel discipline, right? So if your passion is, I'll always like to talk about working on the boundaries between two disciplines. So if your passion is, like Jennifer was describing, right? Your passion is somewhere between geoscience and well engineering, well design, right? Some people may be having data analytics, some people be geologists and geophysicists, some of them will be geology and MBA. But you may expand some thinking so you have some backup skill set, broaden them. But I would say if it is your passion, you're going to be the most useful following your passion as a member of the society. That's my view. And I don't think geology is going to go away. I think it's not going to go away for several decades still. Actually, never going to go away. It's going to be useful.
That's absolutely right. So we're right on time. I'm just going to read one last comment that was posted here from Antoinette. She says, I don't think she has a question, but she says, excellent advice and presentations, Jennifer and Jacek. We are all leaders to some extent in various times in our professional and personal lives. I am not a supervisor or manager, but I'm currently taking on tasks outside my job and always looking for opportunities to do different things. Real leaders are the ordinary people with extraordinary determination and actions that speak louder than words. So I think that's a pretty good and inspiring message from Antoinette, and kind of following what we were just talking about, following your passion if you are really passionate about geosciences. So any other questions from the audience or last comment?
And we skimmed over Tanya's question, so if Tanya wants to reach out and have a conversation, very happy to do it. Actually, I'm part of the American APG Corporate Advisory Board, representing BP and CAB, so I was in a lot of conversation about the merger. So Tanya, if you want to follow up, happy to do it offline.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, with that, thank you very much for joining us today. Again, make sure you check our YouTube channel and that you join the APG Women's Network and attend our events. I think these presentations going to be shared So you will have access if you want to share it with someone else, or if you want to rewatch it. We'll be sending that information soon. And with that, yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.